We want to welcome back to our table Grover Norquist, President of the Americans for Tax Reform. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Let's jump right into it. So the front page of the New York Times this morning, Robert Pear's piece that we've been talking to our viewers about this morning, the administration decided to delay the limit on what consumers have to pay in out-of-pocket expenses for 1 year. What's your reaction?
Well, several things. Clearly this bill, the Obamacare legislation, Health Care Act, was poorly written, sloppily put together. We're finding all sorts of problems. The Max Baucus, the Senate Finance Chair, Democrat from Montana, said the whole thing's a train wreck. The president's admitted that big businesses can't deal with the mandate, so he's giving them a year grace, which isn't clear that it's in the law that the president has that authority. So he's just sort of, I'm not going to enforce the law that's there. We now have another cap. This was supposed to be one of the benefits. Prices were going to stay down. That's being, quote unquote, delayed 1 year. Well, what's to stop it from being delayed 1 year every year for the next 50 years? One of the things that I've been working with at Americans for Tax Reform is in support of an idea that now Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee has put into legislative form, 50 co-sponsors so far in the House of Representatives, to delay all of Obamacare for 1 year. If it's not ready for prime time, if it's messing stuff up, let's just delay it, not just for the president's big business friends, which is what he did. Small businesses, they don't get the year delay. Big businesses do. Individuals don't. Big businesses do. And now there's another piece to it that's not working. Let's delay it a year and take a look at what needs to be reformed.
Senate Democrats and, of course, President Obama say that's a no-go with them. So what's the strategy here?
Well, interestingly, I think the president said during his press conference the other day that in normal times you'd go to Congress and ask for a delay. But these are not normal times because Congress won't do everything he wants. I don't know what planet he lives on. Congress doesn't ever do what the president wants going back 200 years. But that said, when Congress, the House of Representatives, passed a law to make legal the delay he wanted, he said he'd veto it. So he wants to either enforce the law or not enforce the law as he sees fit. It's a very odd assertion. We do, however, have some situations with, like the continuing resolution, which is going to have to come up, or the debt ceiling. The president keeps driving the debt up high. He took that $2.5 trillion in additional debt, trillion with a T, in 2011. Now he's spent all that and needs more. So Congress can say, look, if you want the debt ceiling increase, well, we can do that. We gave you the debt ceiling increase before. We just made you stop some of the crazier levels of spending. We got $2.5 trillion in spending restraint over a decade, not in 1 year, but over a decade. And as a result, we're seeing some reduction in the runaway growth of government. So we've made some progress. We need to do something similar with Obamacare. Just delay the implementation, the taxes, the massive new spending, all the regulations, delay them for a year. Let's take a look at where we are and then move forward.
That's different then than what Senator Ted Cruz, Louis Gohmert, other Republicans are saying, which is under these budget negotiations, whether or not to keep the government running this fall, we want the president to defund the health care law.
It's a different approach. I'm in favor of defunding the health care law. I think the law is a mistake. I'm not sure you can fix it. But hopefully the president thinks you can fix it. I don't think he meant to pass a completely flawed bill forever. But what we have is two things. We ought to, and the majority of the American people think we should get rid of this Obamacare and replace it with something that's consumer friendly, that's not top-down wage and price controls like Richard Nixon and World War II. Government will set wages, prices, and tell everybody what they earn and what we pay for health care. That doesn't work. For 2,000 years, wage and price controls have ended poorly wherever they've been tried. So what we need to do is get rid of Obamacare, get in a plan that responds to consumers, not bureaucrats, and that will work. That said, the President of the United States, his sort of one success has been to pass Obamacare. They kind of named it after him. So he's unlikely to agree to give the whole thing up. But what I think he might well be willing to do, because he's already half pregnant, he's announced, I'm going to delay big businesses' participation in the mandate. Not small businesses, not individuals, not you, but my big business friends, they'll get a year grace. And now, costs are going to run wild for another year, and what you were promised on my cost controls, that ain't going to happen either. But all this other stuff is going to happen. So I think we're in a very strong position, the American people and the Republicans in Congress, to say, look, you've agreed you're not ready for prime time. You're agreed this is a train wreck. Democrats see this as a problem. Let's, in a bipartisan way, put it off for a year. I think that can well happen, and the president can do that with a straight face. This is not a humiliation for him to say, okay, we'll do it. We'll wait a year. We'll take a look at it. Giving the whole thing up, I think he'd rather give you his kidney.
So worth shutting down the government for that? To say delay it for 1 year or defund it? Is it worth the Republican strategy of going as far as shutting down the government?
Well, the Republicans are not talking about shutting down the government. It's the President of the United States who's talked about shutting down the government. On the question of delaying Obamacare for a year, if we say, look, we'll give you the debt ceiling you need and the continuing resolution, and with that, we need to delay Obamacare, all of it, not just the parts for your friends, but everybody. He's already given major big labor unions grants of you know, well, you don't have to do it. Everybody else has to, but you don't have to do it. His political donors and his political friends are getting exceptions. That's got to end. We really have to have one law for everybody in the country.
There's a piece in the New York Times this morning. A former engine of the GOP cools down. Town hall meetings, fuel for the Tea Party back in 2009, related to the health care bill, are getting scarce, advocates say. On both sides, but particularly on the Republican side, deciding not to hold town hall meetings during this August recess. And when they do, congressional offices going to great lengths to not disclose where and when they will take place, or then calling their support, letting their supporters know at the last minute so that the room fills up with friendly faces. What do you make of that?
Well, this has been something that's gone on for years. I arrived in Orlando in 2010, and the Democratic congressperson there had called a town hall meeting in a union office, okay, had filled 95% of it with their political supporters, and then opened the doors to the next 5% who could come in for a town hall meeting, which was completely set up with organized labor's guys. Several thousand people showed up and surrounded the whole building. I arrived down there for another project that day, but the nightly news had helicopters of what looked like a castle being stormed by the peasants. It was amazing. I think it's a good idea for people to have as many town hall meetings and as open meetings as you can. There's a lot of stuff you can do on teleconferencing as well. Which is,
from the article, is the way that many members are going, is to hold these town hall meetings over the phone. The article points out, though, that Freedom Works, other Tea Party organizations, are upset with their Republicans and Democrats that are not holding town hall meetings. They want to express frustration over the health care law to their members of Congress and urge them to go with some of the strategy in the GOP, which is to not to agree to a continuing resolution unless Obamacare is defunded. Heritage Action, Senator Jim DeMint, their group holding town hall meetings in place of what is not happening by members of Congress. What do you make of the Heritage Action, the strategy that they have taken under Senator Jim DeMint? Do you think he's playing an appropriate role in this? Some GOP colleagues, Mick Mulvaney, for example, complained about the work that they're doing.
Well, it's a dramatically different heritage than it was a year ago. Whether it's better or worse is an interesting discussion, and 10 years from now we'll be able to look back and say, oh, look at this. I think there's a challenge, and that is think tanks and activist groups put forward, Americans for Tax Reform, we put forward ideas and suggestions for Congress and senators, activists. We urge people to sign a pledge not to raise taxes, not to us, but to the people in their states and districts. And we have a majority of the members of the House of Representatives have made a written commitment to their voters: I will not raise taxes. Not Harry Reid, sometimes Senate Democrat, sometimes that's a promise to me. He hasn't read it. He certainly hasn't taken it because he's a big tax increaser. But in point of fact, it's a commitment to the people of their state. It's been building for 25 years, and it's been a very strong firewall against higher taxes and limits to how much overspending can happen in Washington. We need more. But but it's a good guardrail for not running off the road completely.